Hey, I'm Dr. Juan Valdez with Reasons for Hope, and I'm really excited to be with you today to discuss a question that's often brought up when we discuss science or evolution or creation or any of these things, and it's the question of intelligent design. Isn't intelligent design just another way of introducing religion into science or into the science classroom? Isn't intelligent design just religion disguised as science? And you see, that argument has been used very effectively to keep intelligent design at bay, especially in the field of biology. You got to understand something. Biology, by the own admission of biologists themselves, has been dealing with the whole idea of intelligent design for about 40 years now, 45 years. Let me give you some quotes of leading scientists in these fields addressing the whole concept of intelligent design. And truthfully, if you're not a believer, if you're not a Christian, if you don't believe in God, if you're an atheist, or if you're an agnostic or a skeptic, what do you do with intelligent design? What do you do with this? They're having a hard time with it. Let me walk you through this. In The Blind Watchmaker, Richard Dawkins said something that echoed the sentiment of biologists around the world, evolutionary biologists, that is to say. He said, biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed with a purpose. It's just an appearance. Evolutionary biology is built on the premise that there is no design in nature, only the appearance of design. And that appearance of design is undeniable. The functional design, according to Francisco Ayala is a former president of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And he said the following. He says, the functional design of organisms and their features would seem to argue for the existence of a designer. Now, then he goes on to say that it doesn't necessarily have to be that way because of Darwin. He and many others credit Darwin with giving them a way out of this dilemma of intelligent design. See, he says the following, Francisco Ayala again, Darwin's greatest accomplishment was to show that the directive organization of living beings can be explained as the result of natural processes. Natural selection without any need to resort to a creator or an external agent. Unfortunately, what he is saying is not, it's no longer valid. What he is saying is no longer really held by many scientists whatsoever, or any scientists that I know of. So here's the point. Information has changed everything. Information has changed everything as we know it. And so, what do I mean by that? With the discovery of DNA and the double helix, and Francis Crick and Penrose and all of these guys, they introduced the world of science into the realm of information. DNA is over 3 billion characters of information, not just any information. It's highly complex, specified information. What do we do with that? Now, is that religion? No, it's not religion. So I hope you see by now that the concept of intelligent design is a scientific worry, a scientific category of thought, independent of any religious connotation. And so complexity, we need to clarify some terms here. Complexity and specified complexity are different. And for us to understand the true impact of intelligent design, we need to understand this. Information in DNA is not just complex. Complex only means improbable. There's a lot of things that are improbable, that are undesigned. But complex is not the only dimension or the only aspect of DNA. It is also specified, meaning that it gives functional instructions, information. It's not just a random assortment of letters. If you spill your box of Cheerios or the alphabet cereal, I should say, which is all the letters, if you spill that, and you're going to get an arrangement of letters that is completely complex because it's improbable. You can spill the box of alphabet cereals 1,000 times and you're never going to get the same series of letters. And each one will be very complex because it's very improbable to get. But that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about information in DNA. We're talking about spilling the box of alphabet cereal and then looking down and it says to you, hey, don't forget to turn off the lights when you leave the kitchen. Love, Mom. Now, if the letters of the alphabet cereal tell you that, then you have to start thinking, wait a minute, that wasn't random. That's a very specific message, a function. So what is the function that DNA gives? What are the instructions? What does it do? Well, it tells a cell how to do everything, starting from the arrangement of amino acids into proteins to build anything in the cell. So it's very specified. Now we have to ask ourselves a question as scientists. Is there any, what are the possible explanations? How can we explain information in the cell? Hands off religion, just scientific explanations. Okay, there's only so many ways we can look at it. First of all, the most common attempt is chance. Everything happened by chance. It was a random fluke of chance that gave us the information in DNA. But I think mathematicians have gone way out there to show us that the probabilities are impossible. The probabilities of any information arranging itself the way it appears in DNA, by chance, unguided instructions. You think spilling your box of alphabets and spelling out the phrase randomly, turn off the lights before you leave, when you leave the kitchen, love, Mom, is impossible? Well, think about 3 billion letters of information and think about how possible that would be. It's absolutely impossible. Chance is not a good argument. And I do an entire talk on just chance and showing you that chance doesn't work, especially when you're building proteins. It's out of the question. Then you have to look at nature itself, at the information itself, and say, okay, is there an agent within the natural world that acts upon this information? We call this prebiotic natural selection. In other words, nature selecting prebiotically. But that itself is a contradiction, because in order for any selection to be made, you have to have genes. You have to have genetics. And this is not something I'm just saying. Any biologist will tell you, any geneticist will tell you, you don't have evolution, you don't have natural selection until you have information, until you have genes. There has to be a genetic code that is mutated randomly to be able to pass that mutation to the next generation. Until you have that genetic code, you cannot explain the natural selection acting on it. There's no selection to be done. So then another theory came out, and instead of chance or prebiotic natural selection, another group of scientists went the route of saying, okay, maybe the information itself, the chemicals themselves have some kind of self-organization principle. Maybe they attract each other in a certain way. And a scientist named Bill Kenyon, he developed this. Not Bill, but his last name is Kenyon. Kenyon developed this idea of self-organization. He wrote a textbook on it. Dean Kenyon is his name. I'm sorry, it slipped my mind. Dean Kenyon. But he abandoned that theory in 1985. 35 years ago, he figured out, you know what, it doesn't work because there's nothing in DNA to arrange it in the way that it's supposed to be arranged, to give you the exact instructions that you need to be able to build all the incredible complexity of life. So when you eliminate all those categories, you're left with intelligent design. That's pretty much it. That's what you're left with. The best explanation is, and most scientists are beginning to realize this, is that there's no natural explanation for the origin of information that we need to be able to build life. And maybe we're looking at something that appears to be designed because it is designed. Scientists can't explain the origin of life because they can't explain the origin of information. How? So how are we sure there is no evidence for a purposeful design in nature if we can't figure out what the right answer is? In other words, we don't know what the right answer is, but it's not God. It's not a creator. It's not anything in that realm. So thinking this way and following this line of explanation, all our scientific observations show that intelligent causes are responsible for information. That's just common sense. And listen, what do we see when we look at the cell? The deeper we get into the cell, information science is revolutionizing the world. Information science is revolutionizing science, biology, chemistry, because they're figuring out and they're discovering the incredible amounts of information and the information superhighways that we find inside the cell. Craig Venter, who himself, independently of Francis Collins and the Human Genome Project, Craig Venter himself with a team mapped the entire human genome. So this guy is a brilliant geneticist, biotechnologist, biochemist, you name it, multiple PhDs. Listen to what he says. He says, life is basically the result of information process, a software process. He says our genetic code is our software, and our cells are dynamically, constantly reading that genetic code. Did you hear that? We have software, we have coding languages, we have the protocols to interpret that language. Where did that protocol come from? How does the cell know how to read what's in DNA and interpret it correctly? These are computer functions and languages and programs, software and hardware that are inside the cell that just blow our minds. I think when you're confronted with that much evidence, you start to wonder, wait a minute, maybe there is some intelligent design out there. Now, here to me, this is the best way to respond to this whole argument. Having given you the explanation of how intelligent design is a part of the natural world, and it's undeniable. It used to be thought of as just the appearance of. Now we know it's not the appearance of. It is actual design. But having said that, how do we respond to the idea that, intelligent design is just religion disguised as science? Well, it's not, because you can ask the atheists themselves, the skeptics themselves. Richard Dawkins says that if you look at the details, and this is a direct quote, if you look at the details of molecular biology and biochemistry, I suppose, he says, you're going to find, listen carefully to what you're going to find, I suppose you're going to find the signature of some sort of designer. I'll let that sink in. Richard Dawkins says that if you look at the details of molecular biology and biochemistry, he supposes you're going to find the signature of some sort of designer. Of course, if he mentions it, it's not religion, because he's not a religious guy. And he's telling you, look, there is design in there. And it's undeniable. And there has to be some kind of designer. So then the follow-up question is, well, if there's a design there and there's some kind of designer, then who? He says, well, probably some alien race that also evolved by Darwinian means and planted life on our planet. Look, he's not the one to make that up. That's been around for a while. Francis Crick himself said, you know what, that I discovered the double helix and all of that, no, that wasn't by chance. That was designed by some alien race or some other planet or somewhere. Because there's no other explanation. It has to be designed. So when intelligent design, people like the Discovery Institute and others engage in finding evidence of intelligence in biology and in the natural world, it's not necessarily religion. It is science. Now, a lot of these guys don't even believe in God. But you know what? They look at under a microscope, they look at the evidence, and they say there has to be a creator, a designer at least, that put this together, that designed this mechanism together. And I can give you quote after quote after quote of scientists just blown away by the incredible design that they find when they look in the microscope. So it's not religion. And by the way, I've already mentioned in other Q&As, just because you know that there is a creator doesn't mean you can't do science. Just because you know that there is an agent doesn't mean you can't study the law and the mechanism. There's no conflict here. So intelligent design is not religion disguised as science. It's not even creationism disguised as science. It's simply telling you when you look at the evidence, there is evidence of an intelligent design. And if there's an intelligent design, then there is a personal agent behind all of the natural world that we observe. I hope this clarifies it for you, and I hope this helps you work your way through this question, because a lot can be gained by studying intelligent design. I think far more dangerous than anything the scientific community has ever faced, I think they're facing today their own movement within the scientific community to establish scientism, To me, that is a greater threat to science than any threat science has faced in recent times. This idea that scientism is the way to go, science is the only way to acquire knowledge that is valid. That idea, that is dangerous to science. Because, again, we've talked about it before. It's not the way it works. So I hope this helps you. I'm Dr. Juan Valdez with Reasons for Hope. God bless you guys, and I'll see you again next Tuesday.